In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. This is the opening paragraph from The Hobbit, and we see the first sentence from it on Hobbit Hole. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. One of my big complaints with the recent Universes Beyonds is that they don't manage to tell the story of their source material. Well, The Hobbit does a much better job at that, and honestly, that's just because The Hobbit is a better source material for Magic the Gathering, because it is just a simple narrative. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Hobbit Hole, this is an Evolving Wilds that just is a typical Sackett searchy deck for a basic that also has Halfling Cycling 4, which is so funny. We have had cycling effects like this in the past, for example, Wizard Cycling from Step Through, and Step Through is a very good card. Turns out cycling for wizards is powerful. You can find Archmage of Runes, Dualcaster Mage, whatever you want. There are a lot of wizards in Magic. And as such, Step Through is a card that actually sees a lot of play in our tournaments here, and the budget tournaments as well, because it's such a cheap tutor, it's so effective. Halfling Cycling, on the other hand, is of course a bit more specific. There aren't as many halflings as there are wizards. However, there are still a bunch of really good ones. The Lighted Halfling, Alchemist of Ogma, Loto Corrupted Sheriff, the Gaffer, Peregrine Took, and newly added Bilbo, Fellow Conspirator. These are all fantastic cards that work incredibly well in a large range of decks. They are just nice value engines by themselves, or absolutely busted if you're doing anything with food. And as such, finding these can be worth a bit of extra mana. Not necessarily 4 mana, but the nice thing about Hobbit Hole is that it's a land. We don't play this with the goal of searching out a halfling, that is way too expensive. But rather, we just play this as a land, as a fetch land, which by itself is useful, right? We can reanimate it with Sun Titan or Redemption Choir. We can just use it to fix our colors. These cards are fine. Evolving Wilds is a fine card to play. And then, if we end up in a situation where we have way too much mana or way too many lands, or we really need Peregrine Took, then Hobbit Hole can do that for us. And as such, I think this is a fantastic card, an easy inclusion in a lot of decks because it is just kind of free. Like, it just doesn't require any effort whatsoever in deck building. And if you end up in a situation where you can use it, you'll be glad you have it. I always talk about playing cards that help you when you're land flooded and land screwed. Well, Hobbit Hole is a land that helps you when you're flooded. That is fantastic. So it's a great inclusion in many decks. Down, down to Goblin Town. The Hobbit is a whimsical story. It's just cute and fun. It's important to remember that The Hobbit, despite being a prequel to Lord of the Rings, really is nothing like Lord of the Rings. This is a children's story, and we see this in many aspects of its narrative. First of all, its structure is fairly straightforward. It is just episodic storytelling. Here's one adventure and then we go to the next one. And also, there's just a bunch of songs in The Hobbit, which I think is super, super cute. And Wizards did a great job portraying them on these sagas. The misty mountains call, down in the valley, down, down to Goblin Town. Burn, burn, tree and fern, roll, roll, roll. The Mountain King's return, roads go ever, ever on. All of these cards do a great job at representing certain elements of the story, while also being very evocative cards that, well, they're part of a fun little song. For example, clap, snap, the black, crack, grip, grab, pinch, snap, and down, down to Goblin Town you go, my lad. It goes on like that. I'm not gonna make you listen to me sing. The point is that these cards are adorable, and some of them are actually really quite solid as well. If we look at Roll, Roll, Roll or Roads Go Ever, Ever On, I think these are perfectly playable cards. Roll, 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 Roll is a 3-mana blue enchantment saga that has the same ability on every step, which is exile up to 1 target creature or land you control and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this is a teleportation circle, a conjurer's closet, that kind of effect, except it expires after 4 uses, but it's also only 3 mana. That is a big difference. 3 mana and 4 mana is actually a huge gap between these two values, and as such, roll is much easier to cast than, well, something like a teleportation circle. I think this is a card that can absolutely see a great amount of usage in flicker decks, because let's be honest, how often are you flickering with your teleportation circle anyway? Is it gonna be 4 times? Is it gonna live that long? Is the game going to last that long? This is cheaper, and yes, it's capped, but also, hey, 4 times should probably be good enough anyways. Roads Go Ever On is a 2-mana white saga that searches our library for up to 2 basic planes, which we then exile, and then we also gain 2 life. Steps 2 and 3, we then put one of those planes into our hand, and then step 4, whenever we attack this turn, a creature we control gets +1/+1 for each planes we control. Roads Go Ever On is a great card to play on turn 2. It's essentially a 2-mana draw 2. Yes, it's just lands, but hey, I'll take some lands, especially in the early game, right? I'm perfectly happy about that. White has a bit of a problem sometimes, where some of its best 2-drops are actually cards you don't really want to play on turn 2, because, well, they are a little clunky on turn 2. Like, are you going to play a Loyal Warhound on turn 2? Probably not. Roads Go Ever On is nice there. It's just you cast it, you get your 2 planes, you play them over the next couple of turns, and you make sure you've got your land drops, and then you can go into, turn 3, turn 4, and actually make bigger plays happen. As such, I think this is just a really easy, simple inclusion in a lot of decks that aren't trying to necessarily get on the board super quickly. I mean, sometimes in white, you're just working your way up to the first board vibe, right? And this is where this is also fantastic, because if you end up blasting a Farewell, okay, it doesn't have to be a Farewell, but even an Hour of Revelation, just getting rid of everything on the board, well, sagas are great for that, because you don't really care if they die, because they're just gonna die anyways, right? Like, you probably already got your value out of them. So Roads Go Ever On, easy to play, it's cheap, it draws some cards. I like it a lot. All of these sagas combined tell the story of the Hobbit. Just a brief overview for you. The Misty Mountains core tells the story of how the dwarves were driven from their homeland because, well, they kind of hoarded too much money, and then a dragon showed up and stole it all. And now they've hired Bilbo and want to travel back to the Misty Mountains to, well, get back what belongs to them. Down in the Valley is sung as the group begins their journey, and also at the end, so this could be both at the beginning and at the end. Down to Goblin Town. The group is captured by a bunch of goblins. Burn, tree and fern. They escape from the goblins, but are then chased by a bunch of wargs and are trapped up on a tree, which the wargs set fire to. The Hobbit, as I already said, it's a very whimsical story, and as such, all of the animals are just intelligent. Like, they can just speak, they are able to do manual tasks and do long-term thinking, like, for example, set a tree on fire to smoke out a bunch of dwarves to eat them later. They're rescued from these trees by the eagles, in case you're wondering. That's the big eagle rescue spell. After escaping the goblins, the company is exhausted and worn down, but they get a bit of relief by meeting Beorn. Beorn is a shapeshifter who lives by himself with his animals. Yet again, intelligent animals. They are dogs there walking on their hind legs and serving the dwarves. And he reluctantly but still gracefully accepts the dwarves into his home. And there, they are sort of trapped, not really, like they are free to leave, but only on specific times, on specific terms. And so they spend the night there, and overnight, Gandalf observes a gathering of bears, which is the dancing from dark to dawn. And also where Gandalf says the quote on the ordinary bear. I should say they were little bears, large bears, ordinary bears, and gigantic big bears, all dancing outside from dark to nearly dawn. That's why we have the ordinary bear, little bear, large bear, gigantic big bear. These are all of the bears that Beorn has been hanging out with. Really quick, if you've enjoyed the video so far, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and support me on Patreon, link down below. Would really appreciate it. Dancing from Dark to Dawn is a card that I think is actually pretty nasty. So this is a 5-mana enchantment. It has landfall. When a land enters, we create a 2/2 green bear creature token. That by itself is nothing special. There's Chocobo Racetrack or Use Social Engineering. Cards like this appear constantly, but they're not usually mythics. This one has a bit of extra text. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is that spell's mana value. play a land, make a bear, cast a spell, make the bear really, really big. I mean, it doesn't have to actually be the bear. We can make something else big as well. But Dancing from Dark to Dawn is a card that I think is gonna be really, really scary and kind of like lower end commander. So bracket 2, bracket 3 maybe. This is gonna be a nightmare to go up against, because as soon as Dancing from Dark to Dawn is in play, there's going to be an endless stream of big creatures. Your opponents can just play little value creatures and then just make the bears big and start smacking you with the bears. And then at that point, what do you get rid of? Do you get rid of the bears? Do you get rid of the value creatures? Do you get rid of Dancing from Dark to Dawn? Because by itself, it doesn't do anything, right? Like if you kill it, all of the big creatures are still attacking you. So this is a card that I actually think is quite powerful. Similarly, Bjorn the Fierce, a 5-mana 6/6 trample bear shapeshifter warrior. Bjorn, by the way, is a shapeshifter, human and bear shapeshifter. That's why Bjorn Reluctant Host has the human bear creature type. There might be another implication there, thanks with it. I don't think that's in the original story, but it is funny, so I accept it. Anyways, so Beyond the Fierce gives our other bears +2/+2. But more interestingly, at the beginning of combat on our turn, we put a trample counter on up to 1 target creature we control. It becomes a bear in addition to its other types. This effect doesn't end. This is permanent. It just is a bear now. And then if you control 3 or more bears, we draw 2 cards. I think you can just play this card by itself. So of course you can play this in a bear deck, but I think you can just play this card by itself. First of all, a 5-mana 6/6 with trample is pretty good. That's just good by itself. But you play this, you put a bear counter, a trample counter on another creature, but it becomes a bear. So suddenly that creature gets +2/+2. Next turn, you do that again on yet again another creature, and then you draw 2 cards. And from that point on, you're always drawing 2 cards. That is great. That is fantastic. And sure, if you have a bear in play ahead of time, you get even more. Hey, you might even want to play Gigantic Big Bear, which actually has me a little worried. That's a 10/7 with hexproof and haste. And then Bjorn gives a trample. Oh god, oh no, that's kind of nasty. Like, there's this kind of lost art of just playing big creatures in Commander, and Gigantic Big Bear and Bjorn the Fierce. That actually seems like a pretty filthy combination. But anyhow, I think Beyond the Fierce is a card you can totally just play for its own merits with no synergies and just as a big beater and card draw engine. I think it'll be really good. Quick side note, I know that bears in Magic are 2-mana 2/2s, but I'm actually siding with Mark Rosewater on this one. He was asked a question about this on his blog. It's a little sad that even the smallest bear in the Little Bear, Ordinary Bear, Great Big Bear cycle is bigger than a 2/2. And then Mark responds, I don't think 2/2 ever made great sense for a bear. Absolutely it doesn't. Bears are huge creatures. They're really dangerous. They're 2/2s. I get that there's kind of like this tradition to it, and it's just kind of like funny precisely because it is a bear, right? Like a bear is only a 2/2. That doesn't make sense. I get that that is kind of the appeal, that it is nonsensical. But it is nonsensical. So to a certain extent, I think there is value to honoring that tradition, but at the same time, I am perfectly happy to have some bigger bears just because it does actually feel way more appropriate. Our company then leaves Bjorn's house behind and moves on into Mirkwood. Gandalf actually leaves them there, so they are now on their own. Mirkwood is dangerous and they immediately get lost and then captured by spiders. Well, most of them do. Bilbo doesn't, because Bilbo at this point already has his ring. Bilbo found the ring in the Goblin Caves in a fateful discovery, and he really just stumbled into it. He was split up from the dwarves and then fell down into a hole. He was lost, and he just found it there on the floor. It was a fateful discovery, which is also a 5-mana blue enchantment. Whenever an artifact you control enters, draw a card. This card is insane, right? This card is crazy. Am I crazy, or is this card is crazy, right? Okay, hear me out. I'm not saying you play this in an artifact deck. I'm saying you play this in a landfall deck. Put a faithful discovery next to a tireless provisioner or tireless tracker. You play a land, you make a token, you draw a card. Faithful discovery doesn't have the safeguards from like a Valdarcan Archmage or a Rook Turret. Valdarcan Archmage needs us to cast to draw cards. Rook Turret needs us to discard afterwards. It only loots. Faithful discovery just draws of any stinky artifact token we make. Of course, landfall is a thing there. With Tireless Provisioner, we can make a bunch of treasures and then immediately draw a bunch of cards. But, you know, we can also just use this with treasures in general. Put a Stormkiln Artist onto the board, cast a Consider, draw a card from the treasure we make. Why not? Professional Facebreaker, punch people in the face. Let's draw some cards. Pitiless Plunderer? Come on, let's add a little bit of card draw into that loop. Hey, I got a Smothering Tithe on the board. You wanna draw some cards? So do I. Admittedly, there's something really funny that can happen if our opponents also have that setup. If we have a Smothering Tithe and Fateful Discovery and they have a Smothering Tithe and Fateful Discovery, because then we might not be able to pay for the Smothering Tithe and then we die. Because neither effect is a May. We'll just draw a card and make a treasure over and over again. That would be very fun. If that ever happens to you, let me know. That's just something that could happen. Of course, it's a very specific situation. But Fateful Discovery is an insane card. For, of course, an insane moment. Can you believe that Bilbo just like found the ring lying on the floor? Admittedly, in The Hobbit, the ring doesn't really have its negative implications yet. It's mostly just a tool that makes Bilbo invisible. And this invisibility is of great aid in Mirkwood, where Bilbo is the only one to not get captured by the giant spiders. Now, you might have noticed that there's a bunch of cards in the Hobbit set that have these really interesting names, like Most Decrepit Old Bird or Great Ugly Looking Goblin or Old Fat Spider. And that's because these are direct quotes from the book. For example, out jumped the goblins, big goblins, great ugly looking goblins, lots of goblins, before you could say rocks and blocks. The Hobbit is a book with a lot of character. What I mean with that, it is written from Bilbo's perspective. And Bilbo is a bit of a jerk. It is also written underneath the assumption that, well, Bilbo is writing the book, right? It is a retelling of the narrative through his own lens. So the narrator tends to just kind of be somewhat critical of stuff. There are moments where the narrator's like, this isn't interesting, we'll skip past it, right? Like that just happens. And the narrator will just kind of like commentate on stuff that's happening. It is really fun and really, really adorable. And that's why there are these cute little names, let's call them that, right? Most Decrepit Old Bird. Well, that's because that's how Bilbo perceived this bird. It was actually a pretty noble bird, a very old one, the leader of the ravens, but to Bilbo, it was the most decrepit old one. The Old Fat Spider, on the other hand, well, that was a spider that trapped his friends. They all spun them up into the trees. We see this in Supper for Spiders. Put onto the battlefield under your control all creature cards in your opponent's graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. They are food artifacts. This is a really, really powerful card, I think. You can just kind of snatch everything after a board wipe, get a bunch of ETBs, get a bunch of useful static effects. So that's a nice one. But right here, we see all of the dwarves captured and spun up. It's just horrifying. Oh my god, as a child, this was always the part. And we're like, oh, can you imagine? Just these giant spiders. Ugh, the poor dwarves. But Bilbo wasn't captured like that. Bilbo went invisible, and then he ran around taunting the spiders, singing a song. Old fat spider spinning in a tree. Old fat spider can't see me. Atticop, Atticop, won't you stop? Stop your spinning and look for me. This is the old fat spider. It is Bilbo yelling at these spiders, insulting them. That's very much the narrative there. So this isn't just wizards calling this an old fat spider, but it is Bilbo calling it an old fat spider. We also see part of the song in the flavor text. Bilbo does manage to free his friends, and then they're immediately captured by elves. Yeah, they're a bunch of idiots. This just keeps happening to them. And then Bilbo frees them from the elves. That's what roll is about. He stuffs them in barrels, and then they are flushed down a stream. They eventually arrive at Lake Town. And in Lake Town, the Mountain King's return is sung. because it seems that people have finally kind of gotten some hope again that maybe somebody's gonna do something about that dragon up in the mountain. Admittedly, some people don't even believe the dragon still exists, but there are also those that know it does, and they are quite worried. And the legends of old tell, well, if the Mountain King comes back, he'll slay the dragon, and if the dragon is slain, then gold will come streaming down the river. That dragon is of course Smaug, Wicked Worm. This is a 5-mana black and red 5/5 for flying. When Smaug enters, we create X tap treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts our opponents control, and whenever we cast a spell, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, we draw a card and lose 1 life. This is an incredibly powerful effect. Mastermind Plum already exists, which has the same ability, where if we spend mana from a treasure, we draw a card. But with Mastermind Plum, it's a bit more difficult to make use of, because Mastermind Plum is mono black, so we either need him just in the deck, or, well, if we're in the command zone, we can't play red, and red is really, really good at making a lot of treasures. However, Smaug is black and red. I've seen people compare Smaug to Darkside Extortionist, and I wanna say one thing. No. No, it's not. Sorry. Look, I know that people are excited about Smaug, and it is a strong card. I'm not going to tell you it's a weak card. I like having ETBs on commanders. I think that's generally very powerful, because then even if it's killed, it's already kind of too late. And card draw is a very powerful effect, especially, with treasures. It's all very good. It's a good card. But Darkside Extortionist is the most broken shit you've ever seen in your goddamn life. Admittedly, we can maybe create a Darkside at home if we add an Amulet of Vigor and a Deadeye Navigator in there somehow. That would be fun. If you manage to pull that off, good for you. But realistically speaking, you just want to play this in a treasure deck, big score, professional facebreaker, that kind of stuff, and then use the treasures to dig through your deck, use Smaug to refill your treasures. You might even be able to kind of soft flicker Smaug a little bit, right? Where you sacrifice him and bring him back. I can totally see that. This is still an incredibly powerful card, and one that I think you can build a nasty, nasty deck with. Bracket 3, certainly, maybe even bracket 4. Smaug is sitting up in the mountain and he's hoarding the dwarf's gold. He stole it and he's now hoarding it. Gleaming Splendor shows him in that moment. Is a 2-mana white enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws the second card each turn, you create a treasure token. Then for 3 mana, we can make 2 players each draw a card. This might be the best card from the set. I'm not entirely sure yet if it's this or the Queen of Dale, but it is absolutely outstanding. It reminds me a lot of Tataru Taru, except that its condition is way easier to fulfill. Gleaming Splendor definitely has some Trouble in Pairs flavor as well, where Trouble in Pairs is a very, very strong card, and in big part because it's so difficult to play around. Yeah, you can kind of stop casting 2 spells a turn, you can do that, you can stop attacking 2 creatures a turn, but God, you just can't stop drawing cards, because the moment you stop drawing cards, you kind of lose the game. That's just how Commander works a lot of the time. It's also often the case that decks are built in such a way that the card draw just happens as part of doing other stuff. So saying that, well, stop drawing cards, more often than not, that's kind of the same as saying, well, stop playing the game, right? So that doesn't really work. And in that way, Gleaming Splendor is just going to be feeding you an endless stream of treasures. Monologue Tax has fallen out of favor a little bit, but I do still think this is a very good card and should probably see more play than it does. Gleaming Splendor also synergizes really well with Caretaker's Talent, Anointed Procession, double up on this stuff. It is no smothering type, but God, it gets close. This is a really strong card. I also love that it's a mana outlet. That makes it really easy to get value out of this in the long run, because, if you ever end up in a situation where you just have too much mana but nothing to do, well, Gleaming Splendor can fix that. And then you add some other synergies into that, right? You add a Smuggler's Share or a Fairy Mastermind in Unagi, or hey, even Trouble in Pairs. All of a sudden you're drawing a whole bunch of extra cards. That then helps create even more treasures, because you're forcing your opponents to draw cards as well. So Gleaming Splendor, outstanding card. Truly, truly insane. Pay attention to the artwork here though. Can you see that little hole in Smaug's chest? Yeah, that's kind of his Achilles heel. That's where he's missing a scale. And later on, he gets killed by being shot here specifically. So that's how they take down Smaug. Bilbo finds this specific weak spot by scouting it out with his ring, and he actually talks to Smaug a lot. It's really fun. And then eventually, the Smaug leaves his cave behind and actually goes to attack Lake Town, and then Bard shoots him down. So just a little bit of an overview of the Hobbit. But before we go here, I've got one last card I want to talk about, which is Gloin the Mighty. This is a card that I think is surprisingly crazy, actually, because here, this is a 4-mana 4/3, so decent stats, nothing amazing, but fine. That has a sorcery adventure for 3 mana, easy pickings, deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. That's actually pretty good, right? Like, that gets rid of all the mana dorks and Esper Sentinels and Fairy Masterminds and Shoreline Looters, my Shoreline Looter. So it just kind of like kills a bunch of stuff. It will just kill some random things. And it only hits your opponent's stuff, doesn't hit your stuff, which is also very nice. You can even possibly amp this damage later in the game. You know, maybe you have some damage doublers or something like that. And then it also has, as the dwarf, as the actual creature, a really impactful ability where at the beginning of your first main phase, you add 2 red mana. That is so good. It is so nice to be able to just like casually ramp like that. I think this card is actually really good. And I think that's really funny because it's just this random uncommon. Another good card is Wizard's Staff, but I have nothing to say about it because it's just doubling slop. It doubles stuff. So have fun doubling stuff. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to support me on Patreon. Link down below. On Patreon, you also get a bunch of extra stuff like extra deck tags and bonus videos. And you get the Jeopardies. There's just a lot of stuff on there. So go check it out. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.